Okay, hello. So for this budgeting practice problem, we're going to be focusing on most of budgeting, but we're going to exclude this cash collections budget, um, the cash payments budget, cash payments budget, cash flows budget, and we're also going to exclude the variances. So here, I'll put this off to the side and let me pull up the problem. The problem we're going to be working on right now is, again, in the same place as we found the other problems. And at the modules folder, go to the very end and then click Final Exam Review Problems 2. So you want to click under ABB Practice Problems with Solutions, click SME Budgeting Manufacturing Practice Problem Template, and here's the solution for it. So I'll pull this back up, and so this is our problem. So in this example, it says, you are BMI, you plan on selling these graduation picture frames, and these are our planned sales for each month. So first things first, it tells you to prepare a production budget for March and April. So again, we have a production budget over here. Even though we know we're going to be selling these units each month, this isn't how many units we're going to be making. So why don't you read over this question and then spend a few minutes creating this production budget for March and April. And actually make one for May too. By the way, you'll just need that for the future. So make one for March, April, and May. So go and take a few minutes for that and then click to see the answers. Okay, so again, with our production budget, we want to start with the sales first. So we're just going to drag those down from the top. So we want 800, 200, 1200, and 2000. And we'll also include one for June. And again, we want our finished goods inventory at the end of the month. So in the question, it's stated here that you want to carry 25% of next month's sales as finished goods inventory. So we're going to take 25% of next month's sales. So this for March, it's going to be 25% of April's sales equals 300. That means the finished goods inventory will then become the previous month's end inventory. So again, for April, that will be March's end finished goods inventory. But for March, we don't have the month before March, but remember, their end finished goods inventory will be based off of March's sales. So we can just find 25% of March's sales to find the beginning finished goods inventory during March. So therefore, if we know that we are selling this many units, we need this many units at the end of the month, and we already came in with this many units, we can take 800 plus 300 minus 200, tell you that you need to make 900 units in the month of March. So this is how many units you need to actually produce. So I'm going to hide these for now so that we can move on to the next problem and you can actually see it. Okay, so for this next problem, it says prepare a raw materials purchase budget for March and April. So this time, again, we're going to use this budget. So take a few minutes to work on that, and then we'll go through it. So first things first is you want to figure out how much raw materials you need each month. Now, in this example, they actually skip this first step I have for it. They don't include the required production because it's kind of redundant. We already have it up here. So we're just going to stick with how many kits we need each month. So that is just the materials needed per unit times the number of units you need to produce that month. And here it says that each BMI purchases 2 frame kits for each frame. Therefore, we need 2 kits per frame. So we're just going to take that production times 2. And the required end raw material says it's based off 20% of next month's frame kits needed. So this 560 is based off of April's. And then beginning raw material is, again, same as the previous chart because they're both based off the next month. So the total purchases required will, again, just be that 1,800 plus 560 minus 360 equals 2,000 materials to be purchased in that month. And again, the final step is just to figure out exactly how much that would cost because, again, we want to figure out the cost of these now. So it says it costs $16 per frame kit Where does it say that? I know it says, I just don't know where. Oh yeah, frame kits cost $16 each. So if we need to purchase 2,000 frame kits in March and they cost $16 each, we know that we need to purchase $32,000 worth of raw materials in March. Not to be confused with how many we need to purchase to actually use. That's just how many we need to purchase based off the safety stock we require for March. Okay, so I'm just going to hide these because we really don't need them anymore. We saw how many we need to purchase each month. So now, yeah. So now we're on to the direct labor budget. So remember, that's this part up here. So it says prepare direct labor budget for March and April. So based off of this chart, figure out how much you'll need to spend in March and April on direct labor. And then just pause this and we'll get back to it. Okay, so again, the direct labor budget always starts with the production units. In this case, they actually do include the production units. So we're just going to drag those down from that first chart we made. Again, that first chart is going to help us make all these other charts. Then again, we want to find the productive time. So it tells us, so we need to find the total hours we need to make these. So it tells us the time. It says it takes 2 workers in each cell, and they each take 12 minutes to complete this assembly and package the frame. So if we have 2 workers and they're each spending 12 minutes to make this frame, then all in all, it takes 24 minutes to make this frame because there's 2 workers working 12 minutes each. Therefore, again, we want to put that into terms of hours. It's going to take 0.4 hours to make each frame. So we're just going to multiply that 0.4 hours times the numbers we need to produce to get, this is how many hours we need to spend to actually make the frames, and this is productive hours. Now, for idle time, we need to figure out that ratio. So the ratio is 0.25, and that was based off of the amount of idle time divided by the amount of divided by the amount of productive time. So in here, it will say something about idle time and productive time. Yeah, so it says workers are productive 48 minutes out of each hour, and the remaining time is spent on breaks. So that tells us that for each hour, 12 minutes are idle, and 48 minutes are productive. So therefore, our total idle to productive time ratio is 12 divided by, and again, it's not 12 divided by 60 minutes, it's 12 divided by the productive time, which is 48 minutes, will give us 25% of the time is idle. So if that's 25%, we're just going to take the 25% of the productive hours, that 360 and 560 here, to figure out that this is the amount of idle time they're going to be spending. Oh, yeah, except in this case, sorry, they add them already. So it's, in this case, it's the 360 times 1.25, I guess. So they already added it for us. But generally what I do is I do the idle time and then I add it, but they already added it. So don't be confused by that. So then again, once we find our total time, we just need to figure out how many workers we need. And we do that by dividing the total time required by the hours each worker works. So let's see in here, where does it mention how many hours each worker works? Oh, it says it right here. Workers work 160 hours per month. Therefore, if they work 160 hours per month and we need 450 hours in the first month, we only need 2.81 workers in the first month. However, it probably is going to give us a few rules on hiring workers based off of a union or like just based off of what they do. Yeah, perfect. It says because of the union contract, only 4 full-time workers in teams of 2 can be hired. So this needs to be full-time. Therefore, we need 3 workers for March and need to be hired in teams of 2. So we need 4 workers. So we're just going to figure out exactly how many workers we need in total. And then based off of the amount of time they work, if we need 4 workers in March, so we need 4 workers, and they each work 160 hours. And let's see how much they get paid. So they get paid they get paid $18 per hour plus 20% fringe benefits. So that's just going to be that $18 per hour times 1.2. You'll need to spend this much money in each month for direct labor. So perfect. So let me just kind of hide that as we move on to overhead. I almost said Idaho. As we move on to overhead. So again, overhead is based off your production, generally used production units, times your cost driver. So in this case, you're given all this information and it says prepare manufacturing overhead budget for March and April. So all you're gonna have to do is, just try working on that and then we'll get back to the answers. Okay, so in this problem, it lists it out by saying that overhead for the 3 months is planned at $44,000 and will be allocated based on planned frames produced. So what we want to list first, we just want to list, okay, if it's based off of the frames produced, we should just list those out. So 900 and 1400. And so so it says this $44,000 is based off of the 3 months. So this should kind of take you back to activities-based costing or job costing. So we know we have $44,000 in overhead for these 3 months, and they're based off of production units. So what we need to do is take that $44,000, so $44,000, and divide it by the total number of units produced. So that will be this plus April's plus May's equals, $11 in overhead per unit produced. So if we know that our rate is $11 in overhead per unit produced, that's our rate. That's our driver. And our number of produced units are just 9,000 and 1,400. So that $11 times that will give us this amount of overhead per month. And again, I don't know if it's going to be that simple on the exam. I think there's a review problem that's really good that involves different activities that incur overhead, but it'll always be something similar to that, where you have to look at the number of units produced, multiply it times the amount of overhead per unit, or percent of unit, or something like that. So so now, as you may notice, we have our raw materials, we have our direct labor budget, and we have our overhead budget. So we have these 3 different manufacturing costs. So it asks us to simply make and calculate the cost per unit produced. So let me just help you recall that they are planning to make, does it actually say? No, okay, So it says calculate the cost per unit produced. So why don't you have a go at this and then we'll work through it together. Oh, actually, so, okay, so first of all, you want to list out your units produced. Second of all, you want to start with your materials cost. Now, remember when we said we don't want to directly pull out the materials cost from above, because this also includes safety stock. So what we need to do is, remember, we need to take the raw materials required and multiply it times the cost per material. So the raw materials required for March would be the 900 times 2, because it's 900 units produced, and you need 2 kits per unit. So that gives you 1,800, and then 1,800, and then at a cost of $32. Oh, actually, no, sorry. In this case, they did, so you need 900 units, and instead of multiplying this times 2, they multiplied the total cost times 2. So we know that it's $16 per frame kit, and that it takes 2 frame kits. So the cost per unit is 32 units. Therefore, the units multiplied times the units produced multiplied times the cost per unit means the raw materials cost for March that you actually use to produce units is $28,000. Is $28,800. The direct labor is a little easier. You could directly pull it from above because it does not include anything like safety stock. Same with the manufacturing overhead. And then if you add those costs together, you can get the total manufacturing cost. And if you just divide it by unit, so $52,524 in total cost divided by 900 units produced will give you a total cost per unit of $58.36. So that is how you would do the majority of budgeting. That is the biggest part. And the parts we're going to cover in another example are the cash collections budget and the cash payments, cash flow, and variances. So we'll get right on that.